My name is Chloe, 35 years old, and I'm standing in my divorce lawyer's office looking at photos on my phone that changed everything. The images show my husband Marcus with another woman at our family beach house in the Hamptons. But here's the twist: I didn't take these photos. Tom Walsh did, the husband of Marcus's mistress Serena. He had no idea his wife was having an affair until I hired him for a fake renovation project and sent him straight to them. Before I tell you how I orchestrated this perfect karma, let me know where you're watching from. Please hit like and subscribe to hear this incredible story of betrayal, revenge, and how sometimes justice needs a little push. For 12 years, Marcus and I appeared to have the perfect marriage that everyone in Greenwich, Connecticut envied. We lived in a stunning colonial house with manicured lawns and a 3-car garage that housed his BMW, my Range Rover, and the vintage Porsche he bought for his 40th birthday. Our life looked like something straight out of a luxury lifestyle magazine, complete with charity galas, country club memberships, and vacation photos from exotic destinations. Marcus worked as a vice president at Whitmore Financial in Manhattan, pulling in 7 figures annually with bonuses that made my friends' eyes widen when they heard about them. His corner office on the 42nd floor overlooked Central Park, and he loved showing it off whenever I brought the kids to visit. He had worked there for 15 years, climbing the corporate ladder with the determination of someone who grew up middle class and never wanted to go back. I ran Coastal Interiors, a high-end interior design firm I had built from scratch after getting my degree from Parsons. What started as helping friends redecorate had grown into a business with 12 employees and clients who included CEOs, celebrities, and old money families from Boston to Washington. My work had been featured in Architectural Digest twice, and I had a waiting list of clients willing to pay premium prices for my signature coastal elegant style. Our children, Emma and Noah, attended Whitfield Academy, the same private school where tuition cost more than most people's annual salary. Emma was 10, brilliant at mathematics and violin, with Marcus's dark hair and my green eyes. Noah, 8, was our athlete, already showing promise in lacrosse and swimming with my blonde hair, and Marcus's charming smile that got him out of trouble more often than it should. The crown jewel of our life was the beach house in East Hampton, a 5-bedroom shingle-style home just 300 yards from the ocean. We had bought it 8 years ago before the market exploded, and it had tripled in value. Every Memorial Day to Labor Day, we spent weekends there hosting barbecues for friends, teaching the kids to surf, and watching sunsets from the wraparound porch with glasses of wine that cost more than most people's grocery bills. But 6 months ago, subtle changes began creeping into our routine like shadows lengthening at dusk. Marcus started having urgent conference calls on Saturday mornings when we were supposed to be at Emma's soccer games. His gym bag appeared more frequently by the door, though his physique showed no particular improvement. The cologne he had worn for a decade was suddenly replaced by something new and expensive that made him smell like a different person entirely. The late nights at the office increased from once a week to 3 or 4. He would text at 7 saying he was grabbing dinner with clients, then not come home until after midnight, sliding into bed carefully thinking I was asleep. His phone, which used to lie carelessly on counters and tables, now never left his side. When it buzzed, he would glance at it with an expression I couldn't quite read, then quickly flip it face down. One evening while doing laundry, I found a receipt in his jacket pocket from La Bernardin, the Michelin-starred restaurant in Midtown. The bill was for $800, lunch for 2 on a day. He had told me he was in back-to-back meetings. When I asked about it casually over dinner, he said it was a client lunch that ran long, his eyes not quite meeting mine as he cut his steak with unnecessary precision. The credit card statements started showing charges I didn't recognize. A jewelry store in Midtown, where he bought something for $3,000, not near my birthday or our anniversary. Hotel charges at the St. Regis for client entertainment, when I knew his company always used the Marriott for business. Flower deliveries to our Manhattan office on days when no flowers arrived for me. Strange numbers began calling the house phone and hanging up when I answered. Once a woman's voice asked for Marcus, then quickly said, "Wrong number," when I identified myself as his wife. Her voice was professional, cultured, the kind that suggested education and sophistication. I memorized the number, but when I called back, it went straight to voicemail with no identifying information. My intuition, that primal sense that every wife develops, was screaming that something was wrong. But Marcus had explanations for everything. The new cologne was a gift from a client. The late nights were due to a massive merger his team was handling. The gym sessions were stress relief recommended by his doctor. Each lie was delivered with such practiced ease that I almost believed them, almost convinced myself I was being paranoid. I hired a private investigator, paying cash so it wouldn't show on our accounts. $5,000 for 2 weeks of surveillance. But Marcus was clever, or perhaps just lucky. The investigator found nothing definitive, just patterns that suggested something without proving it. Marcus often went to hotels, but always for legitimate business meetings. He had lunches with women, but always with other colleagues present. His phone records showed frequent calls to one number, but it was registered to a corporate account. Then I discovered something the investigator had missed. While reviewing our Easy Pass statements for tax purposes, I noticed our beach house transponder being used on dates when neither of us was supposed to be there. Tuesday afternoons, when Marcus was allegedly in meetings. Friday mornings when he said he was golfing with clients. The beach house we had bought for family memories was being used for something else entirely. I knew I had to see for myself. The next Friday, when Marcus announced another urgent client meeting in Boston, I waited an hour after he left, then drove to the Hamptons. The 2-hour drive felt like an eternity, my hands gripping the steering wheel as my mind raced through possibilities. Maybe there was an explanation. Maybe he was planning something for our anniversary. Maybe I was about to make a fool of myself. But when I turned onto our private road, I saw his BMW parked in our driveway. Next to it was a white Lexus I didn't recognize, new and expensive with Connecticut plates. My heart pounded as I parked down the street behind a neighbor's hedge where my car wouldn't be visible from our house. I had a key, of course, but I didn't want to announce my arrival. Instead, I walked around to the back door that we usually left unlocked when we were home. The house was quiet except for music playing upstairs, something jazzy and intimate that we never listened to as a family. Marcus's jacket was thrown carelessly over the couch. His shoes kicked off by the stairs, signs of relaxation and comfort that made my stomach turn. The walk up those stairs was the longest of my life, each step measured and silent on the carpet runner we had chosen together 5 years ago. The music grew louder as I climbed, mixed with sounds that made my chest tighten with a combination of rage and devastating confirmation. I recognized Marcus's laugh, the intimate one he used to save for me, followed by a woman's voice, sultry and confident, in a way that spoke of familiarity and comfort. The master bedroom door was partially open, afternoon sunlight streaming through the windows we had specially designed to capture the ocean view. I could see their clothes scattered on the floor like evidence at a crime scene. A red dress that probably cost more than most mortgage payments. Marcus's favorite Italian suit crumpled carelessly. Lingerie that was definitely not mine tangled with his tie. I stood frozen in the hallway, my hand pressed against my mouth to stifle any sound. Through the gap in the door, I could see them on our bed, the one where our children had crawled in during thunderstorms, where we had spent lazy Sunday mornings reading the Times. Marcus was with a woman whose red hair spread across my Egyptian cotton pillowcases like spilled wine. She was beautiful in that polished way that suggested regular spa treatments and personal trainers, probably early 30s, with the kind of confidence that comes from always getting what you want. My first instinct was to burst into scream, to throw things, to make a scene worthy of a reality TV show. But something held me back, perhaps the calculating part of my brain that had built a successful business from nothing. Instead, I pulled out my phone and took photos, my hands surprisingly steady as I documented the betrayal. The timestamp would be crucial later, as would the clarity of their faces in the images. I retreated silently, my bare feet making no sound on the hardwood floors Marcus had insisted on importing from Italy. In the living room, I found her purse, a designer bag that cost more than some people's cars. Inside was her wallet, and suddenly the mystery woman had a name. Serena Walsh, according to her driver's license. 32 years old, living at an address in Westport. Her business cards identified her as marketing director at Pharmatech Industries. There were credit cards, a gym membership, and most interestingly, a photo of her with a man and two young children at what looked like Disney World. The photo stopped me cold. She was married. A mother. This wasn't just Marcus destroying our family. They were destroying two families. The man in the photo looked kind, wearing a Mickey Mouse hat and holding a little girl on his shoulders, while a younger boy clung to Serena's hand. They looked happy, the kind of family photo that gets framed and displayed on office desks. I found myself searching through the house for more evidence, my designer's eye-noting details I had missed before. There were wine bottles in the recycling that weren't our usual brands. A phone charger by the bed that wasn't Apple when all our devices were. In the bathroom, skincare products that weren't mine, tucked behind my towels. They had been meeting here regularly enough to leave supplies. In Marcus's office, his laptop was open and unlocked, still logged into his email. I found a separate folder labeled SW with dozens of messages dating back 8 months. The early ones were professional, discussing a potential partnership between their companies. Then they became flirtatious, then intimate, then explicit. Reading them was like watching a car crash in slow motion, horrifying but impossible to look away from. They had met at a conference in Miami last year. The attraction was immediate according to their breathless emails. Marcus wrote about feeling alive again, about how she understood his ambitions in a way I never could. Serena wrote about the thrill of their secret meetings, how much more exciting he was than her boring engineer husband. They had nicknames for each other, inside jokes, plans for a future that didn't include their current spouses. The beach house had become their regular meeting spot 4 months ago. Every Tuesday and Friday they would meet here, while their spouses thought they were at work. Marcus had even given her a key, a detail that felt like another knife in my back. They had been playing house in my house, pretending at a life together in the space I had designed for my family. I photographed everything methodically. The emails, the receipts I found in his desk drawers, the credit card statements showing charges for hotels and restaurants, and jewelry that was never for me. I forwarded the emails to my private account, then cleared the browsing history so he wouldn't know I had been there. Every piece of evidence was another brick in the wall I was building for my future defense. As I prepared to leave, I heard them coming downstairs. I slipped out the back door and crouched behind the pool house, watching through the windows as they moved through my kitchen with casual intimacy. Serena was wearing one of Marcus's shirts, the monogrammed ones I had bought him for Christmas. They were making lunch together, dancing to music, playing from his phone, acting like a real couple in love. The contrast with our recent interactions was stark. Marcus hadn't cooked with me in years, always too busy or too tired. He hadn't danced with me since our last anniversary, and even then it had felt obligatory. Watching him be the husband I remembered with another woman was perhaps the cruelest cut of all. I made it back to my car without being seen, and drove home on autopilot, my mind already working through the implications. Divorce was inevitable now, but I needed to be strategic. Connecticut was an equitable distribution state, but infidelity could impact alimony and custody arrangements. The prenup we had signed had an infidelity clause that would protect my business and guarantee me the beach house if either party cheated. But as I drove, another plan began forming in my mind. Marcus and Serena had been so careful, so clever in their deception. They deserved more than just a quiet divorce and a division of assets. They deserved to have their perfect secret blown apart as publicly and dramatically as possible. And I knew exactly how to make that happen. That night, Marcus came home at his usual time, kissing my cheek, with lips that had been on another woman hours before. He asked about my day, helped Noah with his homework, complimented the dinner I had made. The performance was flawless, and if I hadn't seen him that afternoon, I might have believed this was just another normal evening in our perfect life. After the kids went to bed, we sat in the living room pretending to watch Netflix while we both scrolled through our phones. The distance between us on the couch felt like an ocean. I wanted to confront him, to throw the photos in his face, to scream until the neighbors called the police. But I held back, knowing that revenge is a dish best served cold, and I intended to serve it frozen. Over the next 2 weeks, I became a detective in my own life, gathering intelligence with the methodical precision I usually reserved for design projects. I researched Serena Walsh, like she was a competitor I needed to destroy, which, in a way, she was. Her social media profiles painted a picture of suburban perfection that made me alternately laugh and rage. Instagram photos of family dinners hashtagged blessed. Facebook posts about date nights with her husband hashtagged soulmate. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. Her husband, Tom Walsh, was easier to investigate because he had no idea he needed to hide anything. His LinkedIn profile showed a man proud of his work as a structural engineer at Brennan Construction, a mid-sized firm specializing in residential projects. He had graduated from UConn with honors, worked his way up from junior engineer to project manager over 12 years. His profile photo showed the same kind man from the Disney picture now, with a few gray hairs and laugh lines that suggested he smiled often. Tom's Facebook was public and heartbreaking to scroll through. Photos of him coaching his daughter's soccer team, building a treehouse with his son, surprise flowers for Serena on random Tuesdays, with captions about keeping romance alive after 8 years of marriage. Every post was a testament to a man who had no idea his life was built on lies. The contrast between Tom's middle-class stability and Marcus's wealth was stark. Tom drove a 6-year-old Honda Accord. His house, which I found on Zillow, was worth $400,000 in a decent but not fancy neighborhood. His salary was probably a tenth of what Marcus made. Serena had married for love, then found herself seduced by money and excitement. I discovered their routine through careful observation and strategic questions. Serena told Tom she had joined an exclusive gym that only offered classes on Tuesday and Friday afternoons. She also claimed to be working on a special project that required Friday morning meetings. Tom, trusting and supportive, never questioned why she needed 4 hours for a gym class, or why her special project never seemed to produce any visible results. Marcus's patterns were equally predictable. Tuesday afternoons were client golf games, and Friday mornings were partnership meetings that couldn't be rescheduled. His secretary, who I had always maintained a friendly relationship with, innocently confirmed that these were blocked on his calendar as personal time, not actual business meetings. The beach house security system, which Marcus didn't know I could access remotely, showed them arriving within minutes of each other every Tuesday and Friday. They had a routine. Serena would arrive first, using the key Marcus had given her. Marcus would follow, always carrying wine or flowers or some small gift. They would stay for exactly 3 hours, then leave separately. Serena first, Marcus, 15 minutes later. I started documenting everything in a spreadsheet, the kind of evidence collection that would make any lawyer weep with joy. Dates, times, credit card charges, phone records, showing hundreds of texts between them. Marcus had a second phone I discovered hidden in his home office behind some books. The bills went to his work address, charged to his corporate card as a business expense. But documentation wasn't enough. I wanted them exposed, humiliated, their careful secret blown apart in a way that would be impossible to deny or minimize. That's when I remembered that Tom Walsh was looking for new opportunities. His LinkedIn showed he was open to contract work, trying to build his own client base while still working full-time. He had even posted about being available for residential renovation consulting. The plan came together in my mind like a perfect design scheme. I would hire Tom for a fake renovation project at the beach house. I would schedule his visit for when Marcus and Serena were there. He would discover his wife's affair himself with no trace back to me. It was elegant in its simplicity and devastating in its potential impact. I created a fake email account and sent Tom a professional inquiry about a major renovation project. To make it legitimate, I used my real company name, knowing he would research it and find an established, successful firm. I wrote about needing an engineer to assess structural changes for a complete overhaul of a beach property, a project that could be worth significant money for an independent contractor. Tom responded within hours, his enthusiasm evident even in email. He included his portfolio references and availability. He was professional but eager, the kind of response from someone who saw this as a potential life-changing opportunity. We scheduled a phone call where I used my best client voice discussing the project with enough detail to sound legitimate, while being vague enough to avoid creating actual obligations. The call went perfectly. Tom was knowledgeable, asking the right questions about load-bearing walls and foundation requirements. I told him the property was my weekend home, that my husband and I were finally ready to do the renovation we had been planning for years. The budget I mentioned, $200,000, made him audibly excited. For someone used to managing other people's projects, this was a chance to make serious money on his own. We scheduled the site visit for the following Friday at 3:30 p.m. I knew Marcus and Serena would be there by 2 deep into their Friday afternoon routine. Tom would arrive right in the middle of their rendezvous, walking into a situation that would shatter every illusion he had about his marriage. The days leading up to Friday felt like the countdown to a launch. I maintained perfect normalcy at home, even being extra affectionate with Marcus to ensure he suspected nothing. I packed his favorite lunch on Tuesday, knowing he would share it with Serena at the beach house. I listened to his lies about Friday's partnership meeting with a sympathetic smile, even wishing him luck with the difficult negotiations he claimed to be facing. Thursday night, I placed tiny cameras in the beach house during a spontaneous visit to grab some books I had left there. The cameras were disguised as air fresheners and phone chargers, invisible to anyone not looking for them. They would capture everything that happened Friday, evidence that might prove useful later. Friday morning arrived gray and humid, the kind of weather that threatens storms but never quite delivers. Marcus left for work in his usual rush, barely kissing my cheek as he grabbed his coffee and headed for his BMW. He mentioned the partnership meeting again, said he might be late, not to wait for dinner. I smiled and told him to close the deal, knowing exactly what kind of deal he thought he was closing. Friday afternoon, I met Tom Walsh at a coffee shop in Southampton, just 10 minutes from the beach house. He arrived 5 minutes early, dressed in khakis and a button-down shirt that showed he was taking this seriously. His handshake was firm, his smile genuine, and I felt a moment of guilt for what I was about to do to this innocent man. But then I remembered the family photos in his wife's purse discarded carelessly, while she was in bed with my husband, and my resolve hardened. I played my role perfectly, spreading architectural drawings across the table that I had actually created for a different project years ago. Tom studied them carefully, making notes and asking intelligent questions about structural possibilities. I discussed my vision for opening up the main living space, adding a second story deck, possibly expanding the master suite. His enthusiasm was infectious as he sketched rough ideas and calculated load requirements. We talked about timeline and budget, with Tom providing realistic estimates that showed his integrity. He could have inflated the numbers knowing I could afford it, but he gave honest assessments and even suggested ways to save money without compromising quality. This was a good man, an honest professional, who deserved better than what waited for him at my beach house. At 3:15, I glanced at my phone with practiced concern. I had set a fake call to come through, and I answered it with increasing agitation. I apologized to Tom, explaining that there was an emergency at my Manhattan showroom, a client crisis, that needed immediate attention. I pulled out the beach house keys, hesitating just long enough to seem genuinely conflicted. Tom: "I hate to do this, but would you mind going ahead without me?" I asked, pushing the keys across the table. "You can do the initial assessment, take measurements, photos, whatever you need. The house is just 10 minutes down Shore Road, number 472. You can't miss it. Gray shingles with white trim and a circular driveway." He assured me it was no problem, that he could handle the preliminary survey alone. I handed him my business card with my cell number, telling him to call if he had any questions. Then I added the crucial detail that would ensure he didn't just leave when he saw cars in the driveway. "My husband might be there working from home," I said casually. "He uses the house as his quiet office sometimes. Don't mind him. Just let yourself in and do what you need to do. He knows about the renovation plans." Tom thanked me for the opportunity, promising a thorough assessment and a detailed proposal by Monday. We shook hands again, and I watched him walk to his Honda Accord with a spring in his step, having no idea he was walking toward the destruction of his marriage. I waited until his car turned the corner, then got in my Range Rover and drove to a parking area with a clear view of the beach house entrance. My phone showed the feed from the hidden cameras. Marcus and Serena were in the bedroom, the afternoon sun casting golden light across their intertwined bodies. They had no idea their time was running out, that in approximately 10 minutes, their secret would explode in the most devastating way possible. I watched the clock on my dashboard, each minute feeling like an hour. At 3:31, Tom's Honda pulled into my driveway. He sat in the car for a moment, probably reviewing his notes one last time. I watched him get out, grab his measuring tape and notebook, and walk to the front door with the confidence of someone who belonged there. He knocked first, polite even with permission to enter. When no one answered, he used the key I had given him. The camera in the foyer showed him entering, calling out a friendly hello that received no response. He looked around appreciatively at the interior, probably calculating the potential of the space. He set his things on the entry table and began walking through the ground floor, taking photos with his phone and making notes. The house was quiet, except for the faint sound of music from upstairs. I watched him pause at the bottom of the stairs, his head tilted as he listened. Recognition dawned on his face slowly, like watching storm clouds gather. He knew that laugh had been married to it for 8 years. His body language changed completely from professional confidence to personal dread. He climbed the stairs slowly, each step heavy with the weight of suspicion becoming certainty. The hallway camera caught him approaching the master bedroom, his face a study in disbelief, fighting with devastating comprehension. The door was open enough for him to see inside, to witness what no spouse should ever have to see. The color drained from his face as he stood, frozen, his mouth open in a silent scream of recognition and betrayal. Then he moved fast and decisive, slamming the door fully open with enough force to shake the walls. His voice, when it came, was primal, raw, the sound of a man watching his world implode. Serena. The name ripped from his throat like shrapnel. The bedroom camera showed the chaos that followed. Serena scrambling for sheets, her face a mask of shock and terror. Marcus jumping up, momentarily confused before recognition and fear replaced his passion. Tom advancing on Marcus, fists clenched, shoulders squared for violence. Marcus backing away, hands raised, mouth moving in explanations that couldn't possibly matter. Tom didn't hit him, though he clearly wanted to. Instead, he pulled out his phone and started taking photos, his hands shaking but his intent clear. Evidence. Proof. Weapons for the war that would follow. Serena was sobbing, begging, reaching for him, but Tom stepped back from her touch like it was poison. How long? Tom's question cut through Serena's sobs. When Marcus tried to speak, Tom turned on him with such fury that Marcus actually stepped backward. I wasn't talking to you. How long, Serena? Her answer was barely audible on the camera, but Tom's reaction showed it was devastating. He laughed, bitter and broken, then looked around the room like he was seeing it for the first time. The scattered clothes, the wine glasses on the nightstand, the comfort and familiarity that spoke of routine rather than impulse. Every Tuesday and Friday, he said more to himself than them. Your gym classes, your special project, all lies. He turned and walked out, his dignity intact, despite his world falling apart. Serena ran after him, wearing only Marcus's shirt, screaming his name as he got in his car. The neighbors came out to watch, the drama phones already recording the scene. Tom drove away without looking back, leaving Serena collapsed on the driveway, Marcus standing in the doorway in his boxers, and an audience of witnesses to their humiliation. I waited another 10 minutes, then drove home, taking the long way through town. My phone was already buzzing with texts from neighbors at the beach house, sharing the gossip about some dramatic scene they had witnessed. I responded with appropriate shock and confusion, playing the role of the innocent wife perfectly. By the time Marcus called me at 4:45, the story had already spread through 3 different social networks. His voice was panicked, stumbling over words, as he tried to craft a lie big enough to cover what had happened. There had been an incident at the beach house, he said. A misunderstanding. Some crazy man had broken in while he was there working. The woman was a colleague who had come to review documents. I played my part flawlessly, gasping at the right moments, asking concerned questions that forced him to dig his lies deeper. Should I call the police? Was he hurt? Who was this man? Why was a colleague at our beach house? Each question made him stammer more his story, becoming increasingly incoherent as he tried to explain why his colleague was undressed, why the man knew her name, why the neighbors saw her crying in the driveway wearing his shirt. Tom Walsh, meanwhile, had gone nuclear on social media within an hour of leaving the beach house. The photos he had taken were posted on Facebook and Instagram, with a detailed account of discovering his wife's 8-month affair. He tagged Serena Marcus, and even Marcus's company, ensuring maximum visibility. The post went viral in our Connecticut social circles within hours, shared and reshared with breathless commentary. The photo was damning in its clarity. Serena and Marcus in bed sheets, hastily pulled up, but not hiding enough, their faces clearly visible and recognizable. Tom's caption was devastating in its simplicity. Found my wife of 8 years with her boss's boss at his beach house. Apparently, Tuesday gym classes and Friday morning meetings were code for destroying 2 families. Marcus's company reacted swiftly to protect their reputation. By Saturday morning, he had received a call from HR requesting his presence at an emergency meeting. The moral turpitude clause in his contract gave them grounds for immediate suspension pending investigation. The photo on social media tagged with the company name was the kind of PR nightmare that demanded swift action. Serena's situation was equally catastrophic. Pharmatech Industries had a strict social media policy, and her public humiliation violated multiple clauses. Her own company's HR department reached out before noon on Saturday, scheduling a meeting that everyone knew would end with her clearing out her desk. The marketing director who marketed herself into unemployment, someone commented on the viral post. Marcus came home Friday night looking like he had aged 10 years in 10 hours. He tried to maintain his lie, insisting Tom Walsh was confused that Serena was just a colleague discussing sensitive business matters. But his phone was exploding with messages, the photo was everywhere, and even he knew the game was over. He slept in the guest room, without my asking, perhaps the first honest thing he had done in months. Saturday morning, I served him with divorce papers I had prepared weeks earlier. My lawyer had worked quietly, using the evidence I had gathered to build an ironclad case. The prenup's infidelity clause was crystal clear, triggered by the photographic evidence now seen by thousands. Marcus would lose any claim to the beach house, would pay substantial alimony, and would have limited custody given his poor judgment. His shock was almost comical. You knew, he asked, his voice barely a whisper. I smiled, the same serene smile I had worn for weeks while planning his destruction. I've known for 2 months, Marcus. Every Tuesday and Friday. Every lie about client meetings and partnership negotiations. I have receipts, emails, credit card records, and now, thanks to Tom Walsh, photographic evidence that the entire world has seen. The realization that I had orchestrated his exposure dawned slowly on his face. You hired him. You sent him there. Prove it, I said simply. All anyone knows is that Tom Walsh discovered his wife's affair and reacted like any betrayed spouse would. The fact that it destroyed your career and reputation is what we call consequences. Marcus tried anger, but it felt hollow coming from someone caught so thoroughly. He tried bargaining, offering money, property, anything to make this go away. He tried manipulation, suggesting the children needed their father, that divorce would traumatize them. Each attempt bounced off my preparation and resolve like rain off armor. The meeting with his company on Monday was brutal, according to his former secretary, who called me afterward. The board was furious about the reputational damage. Clients were already expressing concerns about his judgment. The suspension became termination with a negotiated exit that included a non-disclosure agreement and 6 months of severance, far less than the golden parachute he would have received if he had left on good terms. Serena's fall was equally complete. Pharmatech fired her for violating company policy and bringing negative attention to the brand. Her husband filed for divorce immediately, using Tennessee's fault-based divorce laws that would limit her alimony and potentially impact custody. The marketing director, who had crafted such perfect social media personas, couldn't market her way out of public disgrace. Tom Walsh, the innocent victim in all of this, became something of a local hero. His honest pain and righteous anger resonated with people who had been betrayed or feared betrayal. Job offers poured in from construction companies that wanted to be associated with his integrity. He started his own consulting firm within a month with more clients than he could handle people who trusted him because he had been so publicly wronged. I reached out to him through his new business email offering my genuine condolences and asking if he wanted to pursue the renovation project for real this time with full transparency. His response was professional, but knowing. He thanked me for the opportunity that had changed his life, adding that sometimes the most painful revelations were the most necessary. The divorce proceedings moved with surprising speed, lubricated by Marcus's desperation to salvage something from his shattered life. His lawyer, one of his golf buddies who usually handled corporate mergers, was out of his depth, dealing with a family law case where his client had been caught so publicly and thoroughly. My lawyer, a shark in designer suits who specialized in high-net-worth divorces, dismantled every argument with surgical precision. The prenup I had insisted on 12 years ago, which Marcus had signed with a condescending smile, thinking I would never have grounds to invoke it, became his nightmare. The infidelity clause was explicit and unforgiving. Not only did it protect my business assets and guarantee me the beach house, but it also severely limited his claim to marital assets acquired during the marriage. My lawyer argued successfully that his deception constituted financial fraud, using marital funds for his affair. The custody arrangement was perhaps the most painful blow to Marcus's ego. The court granted me primary custody, with Marcus receiving supervised visitation, initially graduating to alternate weekends after 6 months of demonstrated stability. The judge, a woman who had clearly seen too many cases of privileged men destroying their families, was unmoved by Marcus's protests about being a good father. Your judgment in conducting an affair in the family vacation home where your children could have discovered you at any time shows a reckless disregard for their well-being, she stated, her words cutting through the courtroom like a blade. The public nature of your exposure, which has subjected them to humiliation among their peers, further demonstrates poor parental judgment. Emma and Noah handled the situation with more grace than their father deserved. Emma, old enough to understand what had happened, was angry but not destroyed. She had apparently suspected something, having overheard phone calls and noticed the changes in our family dynamic. Noah was more confused than hurt, unable to understand why Daddy lived in a different house now, and why some kids at school whispered when he walked by. I got them both into therapy, immediately finding a specialist who dealt with children of high-profile divorces. The therapist was excellent, helping them process their emotions without demonizing Marcus completely. He was still their father, flawed and fallen, but not evil. They needed to maintain some relationship with him, even if it would never be the same. Marcus moved into a one-bedroom apartment in Stamford, a far cry from our Greenwich estate. His BMW was replaced by a lease on a modest Acura, his Porsche sold to pay legal fees. He found work at a small financial consulting firm, making a quarter of his previous salary, his reputation too damaged for any major firm to risk hiring him. The man who had once looked down on others from his corner office now worked in a cubicle, rebuilding from nothing. Serena's life unraveled even more completely. The divorce from Tom was brutal and public, with Tom's lawyer using the social media posts to maximum advantage. She lost primary custody of her children, seeing them only every other weekend. Her attempt to claim alimony was laughed out of court, the judge noting that her affair had destroyed her marriage and her ex-husband had suffered enough. She moved back to Ohio to live with her parents, taking a job at a small marketing firm that paid barely enough to cover her car payment. The woman who had posted about her blessed life was now deleted from most social media platforms, her carefully curated image replaced by the reality of public shame. The last I heard, she was working at her uncle's insurance agency, designing flyers and managing their Facebook page. The beach house underwent a complete transformation, though not the kind Tom Walsh had been hired to assess. I hired a different firm to renovate it, gutting the master bedroom completely and redesigning it as a bright, airy space with no memories attached. The bed was donated, the furniture sold, even the art on the walls replaced. It became truly mine, a sanctuary where my children and I could create new memories without the ghost of betrayal haunting every room. My business thrived in the aftermath of the divorce. There was something about being a woman who had been so publicly wronged and had handled it with such calculated grace that resonated with clients. Other women in similar situations sought me out, wanting their homes redesigned after their own divorces, trusting me to understand the need to reclaim space from painful memories. I hired 2 more designers and expanded into Manhattan, the very territory Marcus had once considered his domain. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I received an unexpected call from Tom Walsh. He was in the area for a project and wondered if I would like to have coffee. We met at the same shop where I had given him the keys to discover his wife's betrayal. This time the conversation was honest, 2 people who had survived the same storm from different angles. "I never thanked you properly," he said, stirring sugar into his coffee with unnecessary concentration. "For what I asked, maintaining the pretense even though we both knew better. For the opportunity," he said with a slight smile. "The renovation project that changed my life. Finding out the truth was horrible, but living a lie would have been worse. My kids have a father who isn't being fooled anymore. That's worth something." We talked for 2 hours about resilience and recovery, about protecting children from adult failures, about building new lives from the wreckage of old ones. He was dating again cautiously, someone who knew his story and respected his scars. His business was thriving, his relationship with his kids stronger than ever. He had emerged from the destruction not unscathed, but undaunted. As we prepared to leave, he paused and looked at me directly. "You played that perfectly," he said quietly. "Every detail, every moment. Marcus and Serena never saw it coming." "I don't know what you mean," I replied, but my smile gave me away. He laughed, a genuine sound of appreciation. "Of course not. But if you ever need any actual renovation work done, I owe you one. Friends and family discount." A year after that Friday afternoon, when everything exploded, I stood in my redesigned beach house watching Emma and Noah play in the waves. They were laughing carefree in the way children should be, their world stabilized after the earthquake of their parents' divorce. Marcus had them the following weekend, his supervised visits, having graduated to unsupervised, though he would never have them at the beach house again. My phone buzzed with a text from James, the architect I had started dating 3 months earlier. He was a widower with teenage children, someone who understood that love could be complicated and that building something new didn't mean forgetting what came before. We were taking it slow, but there was potential there, the kind based on honesty rather than illusion. Marcus had reached out recently asking if we could talk about possibly adjusting the custody arrangement for the holidays. His tone was humble, defeated, nothing like the confident executive who had once thought he could have everything without consequences. I agreed to consider it not out of forgiveness, but out of practicality. The children needed their father, even a diminished version of him. The second summer after the divorce arrived with unusual warmth, and I found myself hosting a 4th of July party at the beach house that had once been the scene of such betrayal. The guest list was carefully curated, a mix of old friends who had stood by me and new ones who knew me only as Chloe, the successful designer, not Chloe, the wronged wife. The transformation was complete, from the woman who had sat in her car watching her husband's affair unfold to the one confidently directing caterers and mixing cocktails for 50 guests. Emma, now 12, and possessing a sophistication born from surviving scandal, helped me arrange flowers in vases throughout the house. She had inherited my eye for design and Marcus's attention to detail, though she wielded both with a kindness neither of her parents had always shown. Noah, 10, and finally growing into his gangly limbs, had appointed himself the official beach volleyball coordinator, organizing tournaments with the seriousness of an Olympic committee. James arrived early with his daughters Sophie and Meredith, 16 and 14 respectively. The blend of our children had been surprisingly smooth, perhaps because they all carried their own family baggage and recognized fellow travelers. Sophie in particular had bonded with Emma over their shared experience of watching their parents' marriages end, though in vastly different circumstances. The party was in full swing when I noticed a familiar figure at the edge of the crowd. Tom Walsh had come with his new girlfriend, a pediatric nurse named Dana, who radiated the kind of warmth that suggested she had seen enough of life's pain to appreciate its joys. His children were with him, the boy now 8, and growing more confident, the girl 6, and clearly her father's princess in the best possible way. Tom found me by the grill, where I was supervising the caterers with the same precision I once applied to tracking Marcus's lies. We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching our children play together on the beach, their laughter carrying over the sound of waves and music. "Strange how things work out," he said, accepting the beer I offered him. "I prefer to think of it as karma with a little assistance," I replied, causing him to laugh in that knowing way we had developed. Dana joined us, and I was struck by how different she was from Serena. Where Serena had been all sharp edges and calculated beauty, Dana was soft curves and genuine smiles. She thanked me for the invitation with sincere gratitude, mentioning how much the kids had been looking forward to it. There was no jealousy or suspicion in her manner, just the easy confidence of a woman who knew her worth. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange that no designer could replicate, Marcus texted, asking if he could drop by to pick up something Emma had forgotten. I could have said no, could have made him wait until his next scheduled visit, but there was something about the perfection of the evening that made me feel generous. He arrived just as the fireworks were starting, looking older and smaller than the man who had once commanded boardrooms and commanded affairs. His clothes were neat, but not designer, his car respectable, but not luxurious. The humbling had been complete and appeared permanent. Emma ran to him with the unconscious enthusiasm children reserve for imperfect parents they still love. He hugged her carefully, aware of all the eyes on him, the whispers that followed his presence like shadows. Some of the guests knew our story, others had heard versions of it, and a few probably recognized him from the viral social media posts that had chronicled his downfall. I walked over with Noah, who had also spotted his father, and we stood there for a moment in an awkward family tableau that wasn't quite a family anymore. Marcus looked at the party at James, clearly acting as co-host at the children playing together at the life that had continued and flourished without him. "The house looks different," he said quietly, and I knew he meant more than the renovations. "Everything looks different when you're seeing it honestly for the first time," I replied. Not unkindly, yet not forgiving either. He stayed for 15 minutes watching the fireworks with his children, then left with a quiet goodbye that contained multitudes of regret. I watched his taillights disappear and felt nothing but a sort of distant pity, the kind you might feel for a stranger who had made terrible choices and was living with the consequences. The party continued late into the night, long after the children had fallen asleep in various corners of the house like puppies. James and I sat on the deck with Tom and Dana sharing stories and wine, while the ocean provided its eternal soundtrack. We were an unlikely group bound together by the strange threads of betrayal and recovery of marriages that had ended and possibilities that were beginning. Tom raised his glass at one point, proposing a toast. "To renovation projects," he said, with a meaningful look at me. "The planned ones and the unexpected ones." We all drank to that understanding flowing between us like the tide. Dana and James didn't know the full story, might never know it, but they understood enough. They understood that sometimes destruction was necessary for construction, that sometimes the best revenge wasn't revenge at all, but simply building something better from the rubble. As the evening wound down and guests began to leave, I stood alone on the deck for a moment, looking out at the ocean that had witnessed so much. The beach house that had been the setting for such betrayal had been reclaimed, transformed from a crime scene into a sanctuary. The woman who had discovered her husband's affair here had evolved into someone who hosted parties for 50 people without flinching. My phone buzzed with a notification from Instagram. Someone had tagged me in photos from the party, images of laughter and light of children playing and adults toasting of a life that looked nothing like the one I had imagined 12 years ago when Marcus and I had signed our names on a marriage certificate with such confidence. I scrolled through the photos, stopping at one that someone had captioned, "The hostess with the mostest." In it, I was laughing at something James had said, my head thrown back, completely unconscious of the camera. I looked happy genuinely, and completely happy, not the performed happiness of my married years, but something real and earned. The last photo in the set showed the beach house from the water, lit up against the evening sky, every window glowing with warmth and welcome. It was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with the expensive renovations or designer furniture. It was beautiful because it was full of people who had chosen to be there, not because they were playing roles in someone else's script, but because they wanted to celebrate Independence Day with someone who had learned the true meaning of independence. 3 years have now passed since that Friday afternoon when Tom Walsh discovered his wife in my bed with my husband. The ripple effects of that moment continue to spread in unexpected ways. Marcus has found a kind of equilibrium in his reduced circumstances dating a divorced teacher who apparently appreciates his humbled state. Serena. I heard through the inevitable grapevine has started over in Chicago working at a nonprofit and living quietly, her social media presence reduced to a private account with 40 followers. Tom's construction consulting firm has grown to 15 employees, his reputation for integrity attracting clients who value honesty over smooth talk. He and Dana married last spring in a small ceremony on the beach with his children as the wedding party, and a reception that was modest but genuine. I sent them a wedding gift, a piece of art from a local gallery with a note that simply said, "To new beginnings." My own business has expanded beyond what I ever imagined when I was the wife of a financial executive playing the supporting role in someone else's success story. Coastal Interiors now has offices in Greenwich, Manhattan, and Boston, with a team of 20 designers and a client list that includes celebrities, politicians, and tech moguls. The girl who had been dismissed as playing with computers and fabric swatches had built an empire from pixels and perseverance. James and I have taken our relationship to the next level, though we're careful not to rush toward marriage. We've both learned that legal documents don't guarantee loyalty, and that love requires daily choices rather than single ceremonies. Our blended family works because we let it be imperfect, allowing the children space to be angry, sad, confused, and eventually accepting of this new configuration. Emma, now 13, recently told me she wants to be a lawyer, specifically a divorce attorney. When I asked why, she said she wanted to help women like me protect themselves and their children. The comment was both heartbreaking and empowering, a reminder that our children absorb our traumas, but also our triumphs. Noah, 11, has declared his intention to be nothing like his father, which I gently discourage. Marcus may have been a terrible husband, but he wasn't entirely a terrible father, and Noah needs to find his own path without carrying the weight of his father's failures. The beach house remains my sanctuary, though it's no longer a secret one. It's hosted birthday parties, business retreats, charity fundraisers, and quiet weekends where the only agenda is reading books and building sandcastles. Every trace of its history as a crime scene has been erased, replaced by layers of new memories that grow thicker each season, like paint on a frequently renovated wall. Sometimes late at night when I can't sleep, I think about that afternoon when I sat in my car watching Tom Walsh walk into my house with his measuring tape and notebook, completely unaware that his life was about to shatter. I wonder if I should feel guilty for orchestrating such destruction, for playing God with other people's lives. But then I remember Marcus and Serena in my bed in my house laughing at their clever deception, and any guilt evaporates like morning mist. Would you have done the same thing? Would you have confronted them directly? Or would you have found your own way to ensure karma found its target? Have you ever been betrayed so deeply that revenge seemed like the only path to recovery? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories of betrayal, revenge, and ultimately, redemption. Share this with someone who needs to know that sometimes the best revenge isn't just living well, it's making sure the people who wronged you live with the consequences of their choices. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, you don't have to accept betrayal quietly. Sometimes justice needs a little push, and sometimes the best renovation project is the one that rebuilds your entire life from the foundation up. May you never need to use these lessons, but if you do, may you execute them with the precision of an interior designer who knows exactly where everything should go, including the people who thought they could deceive you without consequence.